Join the Missing Witches Reparations fundraiser. Find everything you need to know at missingwitches.com/reparations-fundraiser-2025.
You aren't being a proper woman, therefore you must be a witch.
Be a witch. Be a witch. Be a witch. Be a witch. Be a witch. Be a witch.
You must be a witch.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Missing Witches podcast. It's Beltane. It's May Day. It's the halfway point between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, which means it's the official kickoff date for the annual Missing Witches Reparations fundraiser. Every year, we at Missing Witches and our coven and our extended witch community spend the month of May joyfully and happily raising money for Indigenous support orgs, especially for us, the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal, and gathering together with magical friends to spotlight Indigenous voices and have conversations about Indigenous futures. Here's a quick rundown of how our fundraiser works. We've been doing it for years, but maybe some of you are new to the Missing Witches community, so here we go. 1, make a donation of $10 or more to your local Native Women's Shelter or Indigenous support organization, or you can donate right to the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal. Take a screenshot of your receipt and email it to missingwitches@gmail.com with the subject line reparations. For every $10, you'll get one entry. So if you donate $100 to your local, then you'll get 10 entries, and so on and so forth. And you will be entered to win one of 20 fabulous prizes. The full 2025 list is on our website, donated by our friends and luminaries of the witch community. And everyone who donates will automatically receive coupon codes for a discount from 2 of our favorite witchy businesses, House Witch in Salem and Michelle Pajak Reynolds Jewelry. So a reminder, the conversation you're about to listen to is a part of this fundraiser. If you feel moved by anything that my incredible guests have to say, then take that energy and put it into reparations. I'm so happy to welcome Amanda Amour Lynx, Granddaughter Crow, and Patty Krawec. Hi! Hello! It's so great to be in circle with all of you. Amanda, I think that you have been doing these reparation fundraiser episodes with us since the very beginning, since the very first time we did it in 2020. So thank you so much for coming on this long journey with us. And
grateful to be invited back.
I'm so grateful you said yes. So let's
what? I could get invited back?
and again and again and again and again. Patty, I just noticed your I Want to Believe UFO poster behind you. There are so many things I want to believe. I want to believe that humans are good, that we are capable of change, that another world is possible. Patty, what do you want to believe?
I do believe that. Well, that's like, I'm an X-Files nerd, so that's where that's what that poster comes from. We bought it in Roswell, New Mexico. But yes, I do want to believe that human beings are capable of goodness and kindness, and that other worlds, better worlds, are possible. Absolutely. That's why I do everything that I do. That's why I run the foundation that I run, payyourrent.ca. That's why I write. That's why I do these things, because I do believe, I want to believe that other worlds are possible. That Zapatista concept of many worlds, multiple worlds, a place where many worlds can coexist. And we had that before everything went sideways.
Right.
Here on this continent, we had that.
Yeah.
We had layered relationships. And then it all went sideways.
Yes, capitalism, colonialism, all the isms, patriarchy, hegemony.
Yeah.
I could go on, but instead, Patty, for our listeners who maybe missed you on the podcast before, can you tell us who you are? What are you working on? What's coming up for you?
Yeah, so Patty Krawec, Wabnana Ngonkwe. I'm a Caribou clan. My family, my father's side is from Lac Seul First Nation, which is north and west of Thunder Bay. Um, I was raised down here in Niagara, with my maternal family. So I think a lot right now about my grandma who found safety fleeing Stalin, landing in Hitler.
Hmm.
Um, and for her, Germany, wartime Germany was a safe place. And so I'm thinking about that a lot right now because, well, I mean, in terms of the legacies we inherit from our parents, because there are a lot of people for whom this world that is being built, this neoliberal hellscape, they're safe in it. It's fine. It's not harmful for them at all. None of these things that are being done will hurt them. And I don't know how to reach them. I don't know how to do that. So I spend my time, I write books. I've got another book coming out this fall, Bad Indians Book Club. I
We're
wrote
so it's sorry, it's September. It's coming out, right?
September, yeah, September of this
Yes.
year, Bad Indians Book Club. I wrote Becoming Kin, mostly because I was tired of white people telling me this is not who we are when it is absolutely who they are. And we can't change things if we don't acknowledge them. My writing right now, I have a blog, thousandworlds.ca, where I'm going through traditional Anishinaabe stories, just looking to see what do they teach me. I grew up evangelical, right? I grew up leading
Hmm.
Bible studies and stuff. So you know what? I have some skills. How about I apply those to Nana Bujo and to see what we can learn, what we can learn from these stories if we take them seriously and not just, write them off as myths and legends. What if we took them seriously as real stories that shaped Anishinaabe thought for thousands of years? What if we did that? How does that teach us how to live in this world? Because I know my ancestors on my father's side took those stories seriously. I know there are Anishinaabe now who take those stories seriously. So that's what I'm exploring on my blog. And just by way of rounding this out, you said that you were going to be asking us about story and the place of story in our life. I love tarot decks. I don't usually read them, but I love looking at them and having them. And so I picked this deck up in Portland, and
Can
it's
you
all
tell us what it
stories.
is?
It's stories. Each card represents a story from
And
somewhere around the world.
it's called Tarot of the Divine.
This is
Yes.
it's called Tarot of the Divine, and it's inspired by deities, folklores, and fairy tales from around the world. So every card is a story. And I thought, wow, okay, that's really cool. If I need writing prompts, I'm going to pull three cards and see what these three stories say to each other.
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of like mythology building our world, I mean, you just have to look at religion. This is Christianity, Islam, Judaism, these are all mythologies that have absolutely built the world that we're currently living in. So it's definitely not a stretch to think about how our mythologies build our realities.
Yeah, yeah. What do they teach us about world making?
Yeah.
Time
And what kind of and
for
what
new
kind of
stories. The ones that we've been telling have not gotten us anyplace good.
no, it's time for new stories. Absolutely. Granddaughter Crow, I want to know what you want to believe, and I want to know who you are today and what you're working on. I have your latest book in front of me, but I'll let you talk about it.
Oh, yeah, hello from the Navajo Nation. I am Granddaughter Crow, author, podcaster, public speaker, and shapeshifter. No,
Yes,
why
you
not?
are.
Just
You
throw it
are.
out there. Oh gosh, what do I want to believe? Honestly, I want to believe that people can believe in themselves.
Mm.
So a lot of times I believe in somebody and I see their goodness And I'm just like, could you just please see how powerful you are? Could you just see how brilliant you are? Could you just see how much you matter? And in this world, I think that that's so necessary. And I have theories and thoughts around how our internal narrative is being kind of squashed out by the external programming, and how we truly need to get back into listening to our internal voice and our internal stories. So that's what I want to believe. I choose to believe that. So anybody that's out there listening, yeah, I believe in you. I believe in you. Out of the ashes, the phoenix rises, right? So, what have I got going on? Well, like you said, Amy, I've got Shamanism and Your Shadow just released in February by Granddaughter Crow, and it really is the shadow work that you would outline by Carl Jung, but approaching it from the shamanism aspect, which then incorporates the natural world, which then helps us to understand our shadows are organic. If you step outside, anything that the sun touches has a shadow, and so do we. Don't be afraid. Let's move forward. So many other fun things going on, but that's good enough for now. And I'm just so happy to be back on the show with these lovely, lovely people representing.
Always a joy, GDC. We are so down with GDC. And Amanda, again, always beautiful to see your face. I want to know what you want to believe. I want to know who you are today. I want to know what you're working on. I know you've got a big show coming up in May. Please tell us everything.
Hi, it's so nice to see you again. I want to believe in love.
Me too.
I want to believe that a little bit of love can transfer through as energy. I want to believe it as an act of resistance, an act of prayer, and an act of if you put a lot of care into something, then you're actively healing others that may have less love inside of them. I think I come from that feeling as somebody that has felt heartbroken, but also has felt so full and full of abundance and love at the same time, or not at the same, yeah, ambivalently so, but then also at
Hmm.
different moments in time, knowing that other people's love have and their generosity have helped me through. But then also just thinking about stories. Um, I did a lot of prayer for snow and thus ensuing many snowstorms in the beginning of this year. I'd been very concerned about climate change and very concerned about how hot it's been, how early it's been changing of season, the wildfires, and just seeing that world change. And we have um, we have a winter spirit. I don't know if I'm allowed to say its name, but I started asking for the winter spirit to visit in November. So I think that's kind of how I'm arriving today is through trusting the stories that are in nature, trusting the stories that transmute through who you bump into and who you align with, and wanting to believe that with small actions, like new worlds are possible, and wanting to believe that in tiny acts like removing invasive plants from the ecosystem, you can watch that ecosystem rewild itself. The kind of things that are on my mind lately. Do did I intro do I need to introduce myself? Okay. Gwe Dalawizi Jalapdok Nijichamich a booksin Gin Dalawizi Nina Two Spirit Olnu uh, um Wagamat Cook Deleowi. I go by Lynx, or my spirit name is Jalapdok, which is the one who leaves footprints, and my First Nation is it Wagmatcook, which is in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, but I'm a urban Indigenous off territory person residing in Ontario right now in Guelph, but kind of been around a lot of places. And I don't know who I am anymore. I am an artist, I'm a storyteller, I'm a bit of a mystic, and I am just kind of floating around indefinitely trying to see what parts of my identity are tangible, what sticks, and where the next journey is going to take me as I create and try to form new community around me. Um, yeah, there's a few
Thank
things
you.
going on, but
Thank you so much for your honesty. Like, I don't know who I am right now. I think a lot of people feel that way, but we've all been sort of like media trained to have our self-descriptive blurb ready for any sort of like elevator pitch that might come up. And I think it's more honest to say, I don't know. I'm still figuring it out day to day. And I do have to say that we have definitely conjured some powerful nature magic, the four of us right now, because I just heard a thunder crack. It just started pouring rain. If I disappear, it's because the power went out, not because I wanted to leave. But that's what happens when you get powerful witches in a room together. Sometimes nature just has to chime in. You didn't tell me anything about flash drive, though. It's flash drive, right?
oh
Links.
yeah, that's happening on Thursday.
That's Thursday, May 1st.
I've
So
been,
today.
yeah. Oh, today, because it's gonna air today.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I've been grateful to have been collaborating with a new media arts center, artist-run center called Interaccess, who are doing great work in decolonial practices in new media and elevating Black, Indigenous, and disability justice identity group artists or identifying artists and looking at ways to demystify or increase access in like certain art fields, particularly related to technology and the digital. So they're doing a fundraiser to support their new location in downtown, well, West End Toronto. And it'll be my first time visiting the new location, and there'll be over 60 artists showing various digital artworks.
And that show is running for a few weeks, right? So people have time if you're in the Toronto area.
Until the 17th.
Very good. Thank you so much. Um, let's get into storytelling. Patty, how is storytelling a healing art?
So when I wrote Becoming Kin, so my writing process, I start very academic because I love academics, right? I love,
Hmm. Hmm.
give me some friends who have PhDs. I love being around them. They're so
Hmm.
smart. I personally do not have the patience or self-discipline to take that pathway. But I do appreciate that they exist, that they're out there in the world developing and researching this knowledge. I appreciate them so much. But anyway, so when I write, I tend to write academic essays, academic type essays, because that's what I'm reading. And then the feedback that I got from, some of my early readers, like Granddaughter Crow probably knows, when you write your first draft is terrible and you send it to people and they give you all kinds of feedback, and everybody knows that your first few drafts are terrible because that's just how writing goes. And one of my friends said that he says, Patty, you're not an academic and you need to stop acting. You need to stop trying to be one because that's not your strength. We need more stories. We need more stories about you. And that's hard. That's hard because it's easy to write academic, right? To write detached about how things
Totally.
ought to be. What's hard is the storytelling and how I connect to those stories. Because that's the storytelling piece, right? The storytelling piece comes out in my connection to the story that I'm sharing. Why does the story matter to me? What is the story teaching me? Why did I choose this story and not that story? And that is that then becomes the connective tissue between us. And and that's, for me, that's Bad Indians Book Club. That's I'm collecting all of these stories that are told about history and science and gender and and imagining ourselves in the future and horror and all of that stuff. And as we share stories, we're building connections with each other, right? Because I'm telling you a story, you're telling me a story, Amanda's telling stories with her artwork. Granddaughter Crow is telling stories in her books, or sorry, Amanda's telling stories in their artwork. And that forms the connective tissue between us. That forms a basis for us to world make around, or to participate in world making. I'm reading Leanne Simpson right now, her new book, Theory of Water. And that's what she talks about. She talks about world making and that the world is constantly remaking itself. And so we aren't world building. Our role is to figure out how we fit in with a world that is remaking itself. What can
Ooh.
we contribute to this? What can we bring to this so that it makes in a way that we can survive in? Like Amanda talked about, about winter and doing what they can to make a world that, to participate in this creative thing. World making is very creative. Anyway, so for me, that's what stories are. Stories are that connection between us. My academic style of writing is about disconnection. It's about me being over here with the smart people telling all y'all what you need to know. Story is about me sharing myself and why this stuff matters and why you should care. And so for me, that's the I keep saying using connective tissue. That's what stories are. Stories are these things that connect us to each other. And that's why they're so important to me.
And have you found that it's sort of like this storytelling practice is equal parts, like one heals themselves by speaking, heals others who are listening, and then also we heal by listening to other people's stories? Do you experience that
Yes.
kind of
Yes. There is a
symbiosis, reciprocity?
beautiful, my son talks about, so because Anishinaabe is a verb-based language, right? It's concerned with processes rather than things. Um, so he uses this example of the healer and the medicine and the sick person. And it's not that the healer comes in, uses the medicine, and the sick person gets better. It's the healer comes in, and the healer and the medicine and the sick person all work together through song and story, and that's how healing happens. And so that's exactly what you're saying, is that through these connections, through song, through art, through story, we heal each other. And I find myself an essay, like I try to put something out every week or so on my blog, and they change me. I'm not the same person at the end of the essay that I was at the beginning, because in the process of working through these stories, I've learned something about myself. I've learned something about the world around me. I'm giving shape to something that might have been lurking and I'm sure Amanda can talk to this about their artwork, is it gives shape to something that's kind of on the edges and we bring it into being. And it does feel like bringing a new being into life, into this place. And I think we do that too. I talk about that a little bit in Bad Indians Book Club, that our stories become beings in their own right. And we all work together that way.
Lynx, do you want to speak to that? That shaping, that shifting, that shape shifting,
Uh,
the creative process?
that warms my heart. I've been spending time in a circular process of going out on the land, taking walks, watching what's growing, looking at what's blooming in the ground. And I was in a conservation area this weekend, and the trout lilies came up, and I just learned it takes 7 years for them to bloom from seed, and the entire trail is just covered in the trout lilies and wild ginger and trilliums, um, and so many of these native plants that now that I am learning to identify them and connect with them on a spiritual and emotional level, or just like a physical, tangible level of how can I take care of you and how can I tell your stories. I've been doing that by being an active study of drawing the natural world. And when you like use line to like contour, it's part of that observational process. So there are so many things that it tells you through that active listening and that active observing and observation. And sometimes it's an oracle, sometimes it's an omen, and sometimes it's telling the truth. Sometimes it's showing us the interconnectedness or interwovenness of our human the human world, like the walking world, and then the plant world and the animal world. So the recent artwork I made were of leopard slugs mating, and it was sort of an adage to queer nature and how most gastropods don't have like a static gender. They have both reproductive organs within them, and they just kind of choose when they're going to mate, who they're going to be that day. And the leopard slugs have these bioluminescent penises, and they both like extend as they dangle mystically through the tree, almost against gravity, and they're entwined. And it makes me feel very impassioned to talk about that. Um, the things that are happening right now around people's challenging of what is gender and the dangers that are coming into the world stage because of misinformation. And so returning back to the animal kingdom and the plant world really tells you a lot about how queer nature is, but then also how symbiotic and how reciprocal it is as well, where there is a interconnected function of everything, and there's a requirement for somebody to walk through a trail to interact with nature around them. And so through the art, I'm just trying to like bring those stories to people that may not be cultivating those relationships or maybe are a little estranged from it, to garner the curiosity and just say, hey, isn't this beautiful? Because if there's one thing that art can do, it can at least be something cute to look at and be like, oh, it's pretty, even if it's like really erotic slug sex.
Bioluminescent penises is gonna live rent free in my head for the rest of my life, I feel like.
That's my new band name.
Oh, I'll join that band. What instrument do you want? I can do anything. Bass, drums, guitar. I'll let you pick first and I'll take what's left over. But I do like I know a few people who use they them pronouns not as a gender thing, but as an acknowledgement of like the entire ecosystem that is their body, like all of the bacteria, that our bodies aren't just like quote unquote us, but like millions of living beings all functioning within this environment. I
We,
also want to say, go ahead.
we are the microbiome.
That's right. Like we
Breathe
are
down as in the whole like mycelial network.
exactly. And I also want to say that one of the things that I love most about your work, Lynx, is that it's very earthbound, it's very natural. But you don't shy away from high tech either. So it's this really interesting, like specifically your artwork is like this meeting place between like the primordial life and also like high tech. Do you think that there's like a tension between those things when you do you feel a tension when you're working or do you just have a I'm better with my hands than I am with my mouth. I'm doing lots of hand gestures, listeners.
I wear
Right
my
now I'm just
microphone.
kind yeah. So
I
is
think on my words and my tongue all the time as I stutter through this podcast. I think as I connect more the sky world and the living world, like the walking world and the underworlds, there's like a technological median space that is like cross-dimensional. And maybe that sounds really galactic and like woo-woo, but there is tension between the old ways and tradition, but then there's also the the way that we have always adapted. So adapting to what conditions we're surrounded by and making use of and maybe even in the act of reparations or the act of coexisting with so many different beings now that are newer to like this territory and being very naturally welcoming, but then needing to like be aware of like what all these gifts we bring. What is it that we're carrying in that medicine? And sometimes it means that there needs to be turn taking between um, who's holding like what power.
Ooh.
And when I'm thinking about, I guess, new media and like really techie art, I think there can be a real danger zone when it comes to like the use and exploitation of natural resources to power things that create and generate technology that it's almost like the output needs to be worth how much it costs us. Those resources are finite. So in some ways, like how much do our stories cost? But also there is a continuum of like the more you're aware of that trans-dimensional travel or the trans-dimensional communication between things that you said primordial. So things like little plankton or atoms, things that glow, look a whole lot like the machines that we use that are constantly neon and glowing. And there's sort of um, a conversation that happens between those things. Um, I don't know if I like brought the point back to the center or not, but I think very, it's a place to tread carefully, I think. Because there's a lot to consider in terms of how much you use and how much you share, and being mindful of like, I think Patty was sort of speaking to this a little bit, or maybe I'm curious to see how that relates to your storytelling practice, or you, Granddaughter Crow, of um, the intentionality and how you tell your story with the trust of like someone to who will hold your story and take care of it when it gets told.
I would love to turn to GDC on this because, Mama, you're so prolific. You've written so many and published so many books, plus you have your podcast. And I know from my experience, it does take a lot of trust in the world to tell your story. And Patty, I'm sure you agree. Like, you have these moments where I know I do at least, where I'm like, oh, what did I say? What did I write? Is the world going to understand the point that I'm trying to make? So maybe this comes back to the healing nature of storytelling too. Maybe it doesn't. But GDC, tell me about storytelling and sharing and trust. And if you feel like a technology, but I really want to hear about how you find your way through to trust the world to give yourself so completely to us.
No, I just had to laugh because that is loaded. I love it. I first want to mention that what Patty was talking about being a little distant because you're writing academic. I totally get that. You know, you're safe. You get to just go, I read this here, and here is the credible source, and based on this, according to that, blah, blah, blah. And it's really kind of cool. And I do really appreciate academia, and half of the book that you hold in your hand right there, Amy, Shamanism in Your Shadow, the first part is very academic. And it was so much more fun and easy to write on one hand, but like Patty said, it was disconnected. And then, Lynx brings up that point of trust. And I just sat here with my mic on mute because I'm laughing because I'm like, do I? Do I trust? Do I? Or is that what I should have said? What I want to believe? I want to believe that I can trust people.
Seriously.
Seriously. Okay, so this is how it goes for me. I write, and then my editor comes back and says, "Oh, this would be so much more interesting if you would add a little bit of your own, like, examples, your personal stories." I'm like, what? I didn't know personal
Right.
stories. It When I started doing that a few books back, it was like surgery. It was very raw, too raw, raw, raw. And in addition to that, I was in this idea that I lived a life that nobody else has lived, and so why or how could they understand? But even like what Patty said at the beginning, yes, I am my father, Navajo, and wonderful, amazing, yet Reverend of the Christian faith. So I was raised, and my mother Dutch. So I was raised in a very dualistic, I mean, if you want to talk about technology versus the natural world or academic versus your personal stories, basically what it causes us to do is become a bridge. At least that's what it causes me to do. I have to like look at it from point A and then scurry on over to point B and go, did that make sense? And the interesting thing about this path that I have found, when I started revealing my own personal stories, I was so terrified. I was terrified. I was like, this is not what I signed up for. And I was reading stories on how to handle haters and like, what do I do? Do I need a psychologist? Kidding, not kidding. But when I shared, you know what I actually got back? was community. People
Mm.
told me that I articulated something that they didn't know how to articulate. And although my experience was slightly different in my story, the energy of the duality and the pressure and the judgment, or you have to be this or you have to be that, and this is what good people do, and this is what we don't do, all of that, that theme flows through so many lives. And it actually, me becoming raw, actually was more, it was less about me. It was less about get to know who Granddaughter Crow is, and more about Granddaughter Crow is going to show you how to have the courage to tell your story. And so that I think also speaks to that healing circle between the patient and medicine man and the healing herbs and all of that. It speaks to the understanding of the interweaving that Lynx is talking about between the natural world and the technology. And I mean, it goes on, but it is an interface. It is connectivity. And the difference between storytelling and any other type of connectivity is that it's oral. You have to say it out loud, which means that your ears have to hear you say it out loud. And then, in and of itself, begins to almost unfold the next layer of who you are. Because sometimes I say things or I write it in a book and I'm like, oh, I'll hear somebody say, oh my God, I heard this and da 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 da. I'm like, oh my God, that's so amazing. They're like, yeah, page 32, your book. And I'm like, there is no way. There is no way that that came through. So it's a spirit unto itself. I think that storytelling is very honored within many, many cultures. Definitely within the Navajo Nation, as it has been an oral culture and didn't really even start recording until like the last 200 years, when I believe a Dutch person came in and tried to figure out how to articulate so that we could have a written language, which is great, but it's also like, huh, that's an interesting dichotomy there too. So it's interesting because when I tell a story, I am sharing of my, not words, I'm sharing of my experience, my passion, my pain, and it's relatable, even though I might have gone through something different. And it's helping other people to, like with Lynx, a picture speaks 1,000 words, so it's a story without words. And so it is because then people can identify. I think that's the key for me is in order to do that interconnectivity, one must identify with who am I in this story? Who am I in this story? Like, and it's also very interesting because even when you think about childhood stories, I'm going to ask the listeners to do this really quickly. Think about a childhood story, maybe your favorite childhood story. Once you get it in your mind, what character did you identify with? And journal about that path because that is the doorway, a window to more of your authenticity. Um, so yeah, do I trust? I trust the process. I trust that I will have the courage to speak my truth. And I trust that the listener will not necessarily hear my words. They will hear their truth. That's what I trust.
Patty, I saw you reacting to GDC talking about dualism and her own identity becoming a bridge. How are you working your bridge, your identity bridge building?
I was reacting to so many things.
Yeah.
Granddaughter Pro was saying there's just I've got jotting down trust and articulating the things because because when I think about becoming kin. that was written, for the nice white Christian ladies that I grew up with. It was written for, migrants and newcomers to come to terms with the Canada that they had entered. And like, but what did I have to say to Indigenous people that they didn't already know about this history, right? I wasn't telling them anything that they didn't already know. And that was what I heard back from people was that I gave them language to articulate the things that they did know.
Mm.
I gave them the language and the stories with which to do that. And so that I'm really grateful for. Um, but yeah, that duality of I know I'm Ojibwe, but I'm going to church every Sunday. I know I'm Ojibwe, but I'm surrounded by white people, and I'm learning how to be Ojibwe from watching Little House on the Prairie, which is like not a reliable source of information as a child. You're thinking about the childhood stories, right? Like these are the stories that we grew up with, not reliable information at all. Um, well, and then that leaves you, and I think part of the duality. Oh, for me, what I'm hearing, I don't want to put words in Granddaughter Crow's mouth, but what I'm hearing is that sense of being outside of both worlds, right? I can't be fully part of the white world that I was raised in because I was the brown kid in the white family. And everybody was always asking me, where are you from? What are you? Which is always a charming
What
question to
are
ask a
you?
child.
Yeah.
What are you?
Hmm.
And then when I tell them that I was part Native or part Indian, well, what part? And then because I was a mouthy kid, I would say, well, my heart and my brain. I would say,
In my mouth.
but I still feel that way. But definitely not my feet because I'm like the most indoor, not going for walks Indian that you'll ever meet. Um, but then you don't fully fit in with the indigenous community either because they have that whole shared history of background and experience that I don't have, that adoptees don't have, right? Because we were raised apart. And so we do kind of form a bridge, but it's a bridge based in our outsiderness, which is not a terrible place to be. There's a lot of us in that place, in all kinds of ways. I mean, I think a community made of missing witches knows exactly what it is to be on the outside. Being on the outside allows you to be a very effective observer,
Yes,
a
thank you.
very effective observer of this community that I was raised in, and then also this community that I am also part of, that I have, friends and family, and I am connected to the Native community. As an adult, I wasn't as a child, but as an adult, I am. And I have cousins that I have found and, all kinds of relatives. Um, and because I'm kind of observing both, I see connections. I see possibilities. I see where, you know what? That Bible story you grew up reading didn't have to be interpreted that way. You could read it differently because here's our stories. And kind of unpacking that as I read the other stories. You asked about trust. And that's really hard because when you send your stories out into the world, they do become their own thing and you lose control of them. When Lynx puts their artwork out into the world, you lose control over how other people see it. If you want to control your story, you got to keep it to yourself. You can't share it. But then what's
Mm.
the point of having a story if you're not sharing it? We have to, a Palestinian storyteller, I used to have a podcast, and I had a Palestinian storyteller on it. And she told us this charming little story about a fox. And then at the end of the story, she says, and now my bird has flown. And I thought, what a beautiful image for sending our stories out into the world. And now our bird has flown. And where it goes next and what it does is not my control. And so for me, that question of trust is about letting go of that control. And if I get haters and, people on social media, whatever, they're saying whatever they're saying, I don't engage with unserious people. I don't engage. It's just, what? Block, mute, move on, not interested. Um, but the vast majority of kind of sharing Granddaughter Crow's experience has been positive, has been people saying, well, I never thought of it that way. You gave me the words to talk about it. Let me add my own story to your story. And and that's beautiful. And I did not see what Lynx shared, and I want to see it.
Can
Oh,
you describe it while you hold it up?
I keep this card sort of in my work
Oh,
area,
control.
and it just says control, and it has like the sign of Capricorn and Jupiter on the bottom. So I don't know. I was like, hey, you just said the magic word.
The word of the day.
I think it's Oracle of the Radiant Sun. Whoever.
Oracle of the Radiant Sun. Mm,
I think
I'm gonna
that's what
check
it's
that out for
called.
sure.
The Radiant Sun part, I'm sure of.
Yeah. And Google will fill in the rest. Oh my goodness, look at the time. This has gone so quickly, but I do have a very, very, very important question about a world that is building and rebuilding itself. I want to hear from each of you. Excuse me. If it feels comfortable for you to close your eyes, please do so. But I want to ask you to tell a story of a world that is rebuilding itself and tell me what would a re-indigenized world look like? And you're free to be as fantastical or as grounded as you choose in this storytelling. But Patty, let's start with you. Please tell me that story.
Oh, a re-indigenized world is is a world without borders. It's a world where you live in your community according to the ways of your community. And then the further out you get, the influence of that community starts to layer with the influence of other communities. And a lot of us live in those layered, people will live in those layered spaces, sharing the both and of the communities where other people are living.
Yes.
And that is Anishinaabe governance. That's how we lived. And when I imagine a re-indigenized world, and I did close my eyes, that's what I think of is a world without borders, with cities or villages or communities, however those look. And we live in our own way. And then that kind of radiates out. And then if it's a city that's living in a bad, harmful way, they can be cut off until they get their shit together. Can I swear on this podcast? Until they get their stuff
Yeah.
together.
No, get your
You
fucking
know?
shit together,
Until
people.
they get their shit together and then we can rejoin with them. But there's no need for all of this conquering ownership nonsense.
And
That
the either or as opposed to
yeah,
the
there's
both
both.
and.
It's a universe full of both
Yes, it is.
and that includes the leopard slugs as full citizens of these communities. It includes trees and the thunders and the waters as full citizens of these communities. This isn't a world of people living on top of nature. We are all full citizens working together. And yeah, I need to write that story. That'll be
Yes.
great.
I'm excited to hear or read the very fleshed out version of that.
That would actually be a good story.
I think it will be. I think all of you should write that story. Amanda, Amour, Lynx, bioluminescent penises, and what else? What else will we see in a re-indigenized world? What does it look like?
Just before we came on the show, I walked into the backyard and it comes back to that trust and that control. And we just had like a thunderstorm tornado warning. So whatever you experienced came very briefly, and then the sun just came out through the clouds with like the water and like just kind of glistening through, what do you call it? The the sunshine hour, what just
The
before the
golden hour?
golden hour, yeah.
Hmm.
And I wanted to check out the garden. And there's been a lot of emotions in my garden, and it's been a journey in trusting that I've planted pollinators and native plants, and they are coexisting among what was there before. And there's like little barren patches where there was like untended grass and mosses, and um, I think there's some like invasive things that I gotta pull out. But I thought surely that many of these things died because um, they didn't really last, like when I transplanted them. And I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to find out how to fill the space. But there's a thing that plants do in the beginning is they put their energy into the roots before they put their energy into the leaves, and then before they put their energy into their blooms or their fruits. And so the work that they're putting into existence is underground.
Mm.
And I just walked out there and I just saw Solomon's seal that I thought was surely dead. And it's come out. There's St. John's wort, and it's popping out from like the bottom and just like this green and purple prairie smoke. And I don't think they'll flower this year, but they're still kicking and they're kind of perking up from before. And there's patience. And there's this tension as well of wanting to control a garden, wanting to control like how lush and abundant it looks, but knowing that it's a patient process. And so I think when I think of that world building, there's a lot of that. What are you like feeding into your roots? And sometimes it actually is really painful to just see nothing growing for a while because you can't really see what's happening. So that little like, that intention, that like praying for snow, that like praying for rain, to nourish and build again is really um you have to let go into that process and just like let it be. The more I try to hold on tight to it, the more I'm stressing my own self out, knowing that there's a process that's like way larger and I can put my love into it. So I want to believe in love. I would put that love into something, but you don't know what somebody's going to do with it. You don't know if it's going to nourish and create buds. You just gotta hope. And when the springtime comes again, then you can see what's become of it. But similarly to that, I'm gonna do some like garlic mustard pulling too and making pesto out of it. So also looking at like what are those harms, but like how can you make good of those harms and like something nutritious that can also feed your community. It's like those are conversations that are generative as well. So it's like it always kind of comes back to that like transpersonal. It's like I can tell my personal story, but it's like it's living in the ground with all these other beings. And I'm like, oh, just as the bugs are like coming out of the leaves, is just as I'm emerging as this person. I don't know who I am quite yet, but there's a trust that if I give up control, and let go, it'll show me. Or maybe it's just actively happening constantly.
I am going to carry this with me, Lynx. Thank you, because there is this like we're living under capitalism and it's all about the flower and it doesn't care about the roots. And if you go into capitalism and you say, you can't see what I'm doing because I'm working on my roots and it's all happening underground, capitalism's like, you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything. Show me the money, show me the flower, you know? So that idea of like a re-indigenized world like focusing on its roots and allowing the bloom. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Granddaughter Crow, I know there is so much wisdom of the natural world that you can see.
I know. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I love and agree with both Patty and Lynx as well as Amy, I love that. I never really put all of that together. And once again, articulating. So let me create a story. Um, One day, nobody knew that this would happen, but when we woke up, everything could speak our language. The cat said to me, "Good morning. Where the fuck is my food?" Because that's what it would actually say. And the tree, I would be like, I'd go outside and the tree would be like, oh, stretching and growing taller and looking for the sun and literally telling me, "Oh, good morning. I'm going to raise my arms and stretch my body and reach for the sun." But it's telling us in our given language, right? So the plants are going to actually talk in our given language, and that's the whole key. Just for 24 hours, if everybody on the face of this earth could actually listen to what the natural world is saying, we ignore it because it does not speak our language. And so you have Indigenous First Nation people, witches, conscious people who are talking to the land, who are talking to the river, who are talking to all of the slugs, all of that, and but if the rest of us, my hope is another one, I want to believe that if everybody on the face of this earth could literally understand what the natural world was telling them for 24 hours and listen to that wisdom of the natural world, then it would change and shift our consciousness, that there would be so much respect. There would be like, the tree would say, "Why are you being so mean to the rose bush? Just, it's not you, or why are you, taking this land? It's not yours." What would they say if the natural world could speak? What would it say? And in that world, if anybody wants, here's an exercise. You can literally take a walk outside, backyard, park, wherever you wish, and give voice in your language to the natural world and listen to what it's actually saying to you. Because it's not necessarily saying, it's not saying nothing, but it is teaching so many different languages. I mean, so many different wisdoms. Like, if capitalism, just like what you just said, if capitalism were to look at Lynx's garden and go, "What the hell?" And Lynx is like, "Wait for it." And then, but under this 24-hour period, you would hear, in the ground, you would hear the underground working of networking and let's grow. And this is our resource. And how do we blend in? And what is your job? And what everything works together. And so and then the next day after that, the day after, I would love to see what leaders of this world would say. Then we would be able to kind of, I don't know, categorize who really is human and who is psychopathic, sociopathic, crazy in their head. And it would wake up the people who have been programmed to think that this world isn't alive. It would help them to see, oh, well, it is. I mean, now we're looking at, climate change is all taken care of, plenty of food for all. And by the way, I'm going to respect when I'm walking down the street, I'm going to pick up that piece of trash. I'm going to treat everybody nice. And so that would be my story, is the day after the world spoke your language. What would that look like? I have no idea, but I think that would be a wonderful exercise for all the listeners to be able to do individually, because then you can create what an indigenized future look like, because that's what it would look like, because that's what we would do.
Yes. Listeners, if these stories of a re-indigenized world sound good to you, take this opportunity to support your local Indigenous community and you can win prizes. Take this chance to offer something to your local Indigenous community. And then, of course, you will get something back emotionally, intellectually, your soul level, but you could also win a prize. So you can go to missingwitches.com and find out everything you need to know about our annual reparations fundraiser. I hope you'll join us. In conclusion, I want to hear from everyone what is the best way for our listeners to support your work? And also, if there's a particular organization that you want to encourage our listeners to support financially while we're doing this reparations fundraiser. Patty.
Hey, so the easiest way that anybody can find me would be through my blog, which is thousandworlds.ca, because I believe in the possibility of 1,000 worlds. So thousandworlds.ca, it's my blog. It also has a subscription capacity, so you can pay me if you want to. I
Yes,
also
you
run a
can.
foundation called the Nikanakana Foundation, payyourrent.ca, where I take money from guilt-ridden settlers and I give it to Native people. And we support organizers as well as meeting people's material needs. So meet their material needs and work about, do support people who are working about why those needs exist. So those are thousandworlds.ca, payyourrent.ca.
So, listeners, you can make a contribution to payyourrent.ca and send us a screenshot and you could win a prize. But either way, you're going to get a discount code from House Witch. You're going to get a discount code from Michelle Pajak Reynolds Jewelry. Again, that is payyourrent.ca. I'm going to put it in all of the literature for the fundraiser. Amanda Amour Lynx. If our listeners have fallen in love with you, as I'm certain that they have, what's the best way that they can support your work and or the organization of your choice?
Oh my. That much love is a big responsibility.
It's not. I give it freely without expectation. And you know I've had a crush on you for like 5 years, so don't act brand new or surprised. Come on.
Um, I'm a simple kind of guy. I got an Instagram, amour.links. There's things that I often share on stories, but I'm pretty shadow banned. Like nobody sees content anymore. But
No,
I
unless
kind
we
of
pay, Instagram is not putting us on your feed. Like for real, for real. Go seek out the people that you want to follow. Go to their profile. Go to Amanda Amor Lynx's profile because
I just scream into the void about things in
yeah,
stories.
yeah.
Sometimes you get like um political, sometimes you get weird entomology memes, sometimes it's a thirst trap, sometimes it's mentally unstable, sometimes it's climate justice. And so just kind of tell stories quietly, weaving them and just kind of diary around. I have a website linked on there that I try to update at least once a year. Um, will be, or I will, in conjunction with others, be doing an exhibition alongside the University of Guelph called Manufactured Ecosystems. There'll be an exhibit in June that is transdisciplinary. So there are many um, environmentalists that are working in new technology and things like biomimetics, and and they're collaborating with artists and writers and storytellers who are doing amazing work that just blows my mind. Like learning about robo bees just kind of flipped my lid. This little like tiny bee drones that like help with pollinating like declining um, populations. So it's like, wow, that stuff is pretty neat. I'm not that techie, but that's definitely some stuff that's up. And I guess support Sierra Club. They're actively working to stop Line 5, which goes through Canada into the US. And they work alongside water and land protectors in other First Nations, which is really beautiful.
Sierra Club?
Yep.
Great. We'll add it to the list of recommended organizations. Thank you. GDC.
Yes.
Yes. How can our listeners support your work, and or is there an organization that you would love to see our listeners putting their money into this month? And
Absolutely.
always, but specifically this month.
Right. Yeah, always, but specifically this month because then we get to do it in community and it makes a statement. Plus, you get to win prizes. It's always the inner child. I was like, oh, wow, a prize. That's great.
It's in the cereal
So,
box.
yeah, exactly. Yay. So, I always tease, who's down with GDC? Yeah, you know me. All you got to do is remember Granddaughter Crow. Granddaughtercrow.com, Granddaughter Crow on social, blah, blah, blah. Granddaughter Crow. Um, Support me. You can support me through something really easy, guys. I mean, yeah, buy the books, blah, blah, blah. But if you could hop over to my YouTube channel, Granddaughter Crow, really? I know. Yeah, you win a prize if you guess that, right? But if you would give me a subscribe so that I too can get on the algorithms map, I have a little bit of a goal that I would like to reach. And then of course, listen to the podcast, you guys. I have some amazing people, just like Missing Witches does, and I love doing the podcast. Um, as far as an organization, once again, I am going to, nothing comes straight to my mind. So, what I'm going to ask the listeners to do is to research a local in your area organization and go and get to know them, see what they stand for, and that you might make some more community. Or maybe they'll tell you a story about
Mm.
why they exist and you can become connected, that connected tissue that we were talking about by also offering $10. Skip, coffee in the morning for a couple days. Give it to them and then of course take a picture. But really I think mine would be uh, reach out and get to know local indigenous nonprofit organizations that aren't on social media, that don't have a website that's up and running. They don't know. They're just there with a big heart. They're there with a big heart. Go out and find them and support those people. And if nothing else, Missing Witches makes it very, very easy. The what is it? The Montreal, the women's
The
shelter of
Native
Montreal.
Women's the Native Women's
Native
Shelter of
women.
Montreal. Yeah.
Yep.
But
Yep.
you're exactly right, GDC, and we've had so many people tell us like um because we encourage you to act locally, to get into your community. We all have these wonderful online communities, but none of y'all can help me lift a heavy piece of furniture. Like you're you're many hours away at best. So it's very important to get into our local geographical communities. We've had so many people tell us, I didn't know this organization existed until I went looking for them. And that's exactly what we want you to do. Again, make your donation of $10 or more to a local Native women's shelter or any kind of Indigenous support organization. Take a screenshot of your receipt and email it to missingwitches@gmail.com with the subject line reparations, and you will be entered to win one of 20 fabulous prizes, like thousands of dollars worth of prizes are up for grabs. And yeah, Lynx just put in the chat, join a local park cleanup, you know. At this point, it's 2025, and you cannot turn your head without seeing somebody or something that needs help. and basically will allow it. If it's very close to you and you're helping us to re-indigenize how we think about the world, then by all means, that's going to count toward this fundraiser. Thank you so much, Patty, Lynx, GDC. Again, Patty, the book is Bad Indians Book Club. GDC, the book is Shamanism and Your Shadow. Lynx, its flash drive is coming up next. And then the other show, I have it in my notes, but tell me again what the other show is called.
Manufactured ecosystems.
Manufactured ecosystems. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Amanda Amour Lynx. Thank you, GDC. It has been such a joy being in circle with you. I really can't thank you enough. And I guess blessed fucking be.
Blessed
Blessed
fucking be.
fucking be.
You must be a witch.
Join the Missing Witches Reparations fundraiser. Find everything you need to know at missingwitches.com/reparations-fundraiser-2025.